Hi, my name is Dale. I'm a heating and air conditioning service technician in Valdosta, Georgia. Today I wanted to show you how to test a capacitor on a heating and air conditioning system at your house. First we'll start with the capacitor itself. There's two different basic types that are used in your basic everyday heating and air conditioning home systems. One is a single pole capacitor. The other one is a dual capacitor. Your single pole capacitor has 1 microfarad setting and it has 2 sets of terminals on top. Your other capacitor, the dual capacitor, has 2 microfarad settings with 3 terminals on top. On your single pole, this one for example reads 5 UF 370 volt AC plus or minus 6%. This means this is a 5 microfarad capacitor with a range up to 370 volts AC, and the capacitor is good plus or minus 6% of your 5 microfarad. Usually we go by 10% just as a rule of thumb. Any capacitor that's 10% or less usually gets replaced. Anything greater than that is usually okay. Even if the capacitor says 6, it'll usually function fine. 10 to 15% like that is a bit too much, so you want to change it. That's considered weak. The voltage here, 370 volts, is meaning that's any electric motor that turns creates voltage. Even though the motor is using power, it creates voltage. The voltage it creates is called back EMF, electromagnetic force. Another word is voltage. The voltage that motor creates as it's turning, it needs somewhere to go, so it goes back to the capacitor. If you replace a capacitor that's 370 volts, your two most common standard capacitors will be, regardless of the microfarad, will be either 370 volts or 440 volts. You can take any 370 volt capacitor out and replace it with a 440 volt capacitor, but you cannot take out a 440 volt capacitor and replace it with a 370. You can always go up in voltage but not lower. Alright, you got two basic standard meters for testing capacitors. One is a capacitor tester. That's all it does. Nothing more, nothing less. The next is your multimeter. This is a field piece model HS35. This is the most standard meter you'll find on any heating and air conditioning service technician's truck. This one will do all your voltage testing for regular voltage, for DC voltage, low voltage, and microfarads. It has a setting on it that says 400 MFD, meaning that this meter will test up to 400 microfarads on a capacitor. We'll start with this. We'll set it at 400 MFD setting. On your single pole capacitor, you can put the lead on either pole. It doesn't matter which one you put it on. We'll put it on there and hold it, and it's reading 0.1. This is supposed to be 5 microfarads. It's bad. On your dual capacitor, take your common lead, and there will be a C terminal, a Herm, and a fan. Put your black lead on your common. Your Herm is the compressor side of this capacitor. This is 2 capacitors rolled into one. The Herm side goes to your start windings on the compressor itself. So we'll go between common and Herm and hold it. And my meter reads 40.4. If you look on the capacitor, it says 40 plus 5 MFD, 440 volt AC, plus or minus 5%. The higher number is always your compressor side, always the Herm. So it's calling for a 40 microfarad. Now I'm reading 40.4. It's okay. It's well within plus or minus 10% range. Now the other microfarad, 40 by 5, 440 volts. So now we have a 40, which is your compressor side, and we have a 5 microfarad, which is your second capacitor, which goes to your outdoor fan motor. Test it the same way. Put your black lead on your common terminal, your red lead on your fan terminal, and hold. And the meter reads 5.2. It's supposed to be a 5 microfarad capacitor, and we're reading 0.2 over. This capacitor is good. Now we'll go to your capacitor tester. On your capacitor tester, you have two settings. There's 10 microfarads up to 10,000, and then there's 0.01 up to 10. On your single pole capacitor, this one is a 5 microfarad capacitor, so we need it on the 0.01 to 10. Doesn't matter which terminal you put on which. Press and hold the button. It's not reading anything, saying this capacitor is bad. On your dual capacitor, we'll put the black lead on the common, and that's where we'll leave it. We'll test the fan side first, which is 5 microfarads. We'll take the red lead, put it on your fan, push and hold the button, reading 4.8 to 4.9, so it's okay. Now we'll take the red lead and put it on your Herm, and since it's 40 microfarads, we have to switch our range up to 10 to 10,000 microfarads. Push and hold your test button. It's reading between 40 and 41 microfarads. This capacitor is okay. One thing you always want to do before testing a capacitor or touching a capacitor is kill high voltage power to your outdoor unit. Next, take a screwdriver or a pair of pliers, touch between each terminal even before you disconnect wires from the capacitor. Then touch between each terminal to ground, just for double insurance that that capacitor is discharged, because it will hold a charge and you will lose a finger. Same thing on your single pole capacitor. Touch it between each terminal, and then each terminal to ground for double insurance. That's it for testing a capacitor. Appreciate you watching. Be safe.